Your hosts are The Great Order and No White Guilt. And this is the After Party. The crown winner of last week is the one and only, the supernova of supernova heroes in service to white well-being, Slots, who financially gifted $120 and is also the reason why today we are streaming for the first time over on Odysee, in addition to all of the other platforms that we stream upon. In second place, so congratulations to you, Slots. Thank you so very much for that fine financial gift. In second place was another great among our community, the wonderful Heidi, and of course her husband Raymond, $50 financial gift. Thank you both so very much for everything that you do, and congratulations to the both of you. You may financially gift on Entropy at 15% cost to you. It will be up and running in just a moment. You can also make comments and ask questions and vote on those questions over on Entropy on the question widget, or you can jump on over at Cash App. Down in the description below, you will see the URL to financially gift. Tag me or Jared George as the stream rolls on with any questions or comments so that we can see that you have commented us, DLive and YouTube for those things. Today, we have the leader of the Asatru Folk Assembly with us, the one and only Matt Flavel, on tap with us. Matt, please introduce yourself to our esteemed community. Tell them where they can find you, and then Mr. George will take us into the conversation.
All right, guys. First, thank you so much for having me on your program today. My name's Matt Flavel with the Asatru Folk Assembly. I'm the Alsharrier Gothi of the Asatru Folk Assembly, which is basically the high priest of the Asatru Folk Assembly. You can find us at www.runestone.org. And please stop on by, check out our website there. You can also find our channel on YouTube.
Mr. George.
Sounds good, and welcome, Matt. It's great to speak to you. So we're going to be talking a lot today about community building, heritage, folkways. As we were saying in the lead up to the show, we love speaking to a variety of people, and regardless of anyone listening live or in replay, regardless of your spiritual or religious beliefs, we're definitely talking about things relevant to European peoples and situations that we face. Now, I'm sure as we try to do that, there'll be something for everyone. But Matt, having said that, just take a few minutes, however much time you need, to introduce yourself, some of your background, how you got to be in that position you were in, some of what the AFA is generally about, and then we can dig in more specifically. All
right. Well, first, the Asatru Folk Assembly, we just got done celebrating our 25th anniversary. So we've clocked in 26. I think this is our 27th year of the Asatru Folk Assembly, founded back in 1995. But that was on the shoulders of a predecessor organization, the Asatru Free Assembly. So Steve McNallen's brand of Asatru, which is what we practice, has been around since 1968 and recognized as a religion since 1972 by the United States government. We've got members in 14 countries around the world, and basically we're a church devoted to the worship of the Aesir and to the celebration and betterment of our folk, and all the things that go into that. That go into the word Asatru, I guess, a place to start, means troth to the Aesir, or loyalty to the Aesir gods, and those are the Germanic Norse gods of order. And so we practice the native religion of European peoples before the coming of Christianity. We're a very family-friendly, family-focused organization. So we're doing that. I've been involved in the AFA since many years now, well over a decade. I've been Asatru since 2001, and when I got involved in the AFA, I really wanted to do things. I wanted to be a part of making stuff happen. So I volunteered and I became the folk builder. I'm from Alaska, so I became the folk builder for Alaska, Yukon territories, and Hawaii, because they needed some place to put Hawaii, I guess, on the map.
That's quite a territory. Quite a territory. Did you ever make it over to Hawaii?
No, when I was a little kid, one time I was over there, but no, not in my folk building capacity. But did what I can. Did that for a number of years. I went to Midsummer, which at the time was the only national gathering the AFA had, and Midsummer in the Sierras, and it was in this little town, Alta, California. And I went there one year and I was hooked, and I just went back to every national event. I think I've missed 2 national events since then, and that was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have anywhere between 4 and 5 national events every year. And yeah, I just tried to attend what I could, tried to volunteer, tried to help where I could help. Gradually over time, I became the head of our folk builder program at the time, the folk builder coordinator. I became ordained as a Gothi, and eventually when Steve McNallen stepped back from his position, I ascended to the rank of Australia Gothi back in 2016 in Midsummer.
Going back for a moment, what was when you were doing the folk builder?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're definitely, as I said, we want to hit a lot on community aspect today, family aspect, definitely dovetails with a lot of what we're about and what we do here.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things were you doing? What is a folk builder's life like?
Well, so the folk builder is kind of the most grassroots level of leadership in the AFA, and the folk builder's job is to be the face of the AFA to the members or potential members in an area, but also to be the face of that membership to the leadership of the AFA, and to facilitate those communications and that relationship. There's admin stuff behind the scenes to do with being a folk builder, but fundamentally it's finding our folk who are interested in Asatru, and if they're suitable people that we want to have around, to get them involved, to get them and their families to come out, to do things, to host and to celebrate Asatru gatherings in your area, and to get those folks connected with the bigger AFA family nationally and internationally. So yeah, a lot of that is, making calls to people, answering questions, showing up and, giving them an example in real life of who we are and what we're about, encouraging them on, entry-level stuff to read and to learn, to get involved. And then really importantly, just encouraging the practicing of Asatru in that person's life, and, it being a real religion and a real part of their life instead of an idea or a hobby, to get them out and to get them actually practicing.
Yeah, I should say just briefly for anyone listening now or even in replay, Jason and I definitely warmly welcome anyone from AFA who's here because you all know Matt and you're checking our show out for the first time. We love talking to different people and having this kind of interplay. I know for myself, as I was telling Matt before the show, I've read Stephen McNallen's book, and as I became over the last few years to understand what's going on in the world more, my own heritage, I've definitely found a lot of value in looking into the Folkways, learning more about them. As some of you may know, I've shared some of what I've learned along the way on videos. Kind of to that end, Matt. So I'm getting a sense of what you're doing as a folk builder. It sounds kind of like you're in one of the capacities was you kind of a fulcrum, an interface, as you were saying, facing outward to the potential community or people checking it out, but then also representing that, as you said, back to the leadership and the other strata within the AFA. So definitely understand that you have to have a good sense of communication and dealing with different personalities. What kinds of people did you find over those years in folk building? Well, and of course now too, who come to the AFA? What are they seeking, and what are they not getting, and what kind of questions do they have about what's going on in the world?
Well, so I've watched that evolve in a really good way over my time with the Asatru Folk Assembly. Initially, we had, and we still draw from a wide spectrum of our people. But initially, there was a lot of folks that didn't fit in anywhere else, and so they wanted to give this a try. It was more like checking the other box because things didn't work other places, and those people would come through and they wouldn't stick around. Now, in the midst of that, we got some really great people, but we had a lot of more fringe people early on, and this is 10, 15 years ago. Over time, what we're seeing today in the AFA is a lot of young families, a lot of young, good-looking men and women that want to start their life in a positive way. And I think especially when they have a young family, they want spirituality and religion to be part of their life, but aren't happy with Christianity. And so we get a lot of that nowadays. Certainly, I think we've seen this anywhere in the West, and certainly here in the United States in the past maybe 6 years. Everything has become shockingly polarized. There's not really a middle ground between traditionally minded people and extreme leftists. And so when that divide is very clear, people that are, find themselves with a traditional mindset and longing for things that our folks have valued pretty much since the beginning of time until 2015. A lot of those people are looking for a home, and they don't find it a lot of places. And they do find it with the AFA, and I'm very proud to welcome so many of those people in the last few years.
What about same general theme, but specifically through the lens of the anti-Whiteism that we've seen, that we know has been brewing for decades, but obviously it's really reached a boiling point recently. Anything that's a reaction to that? I know, again, for myself, I kind of got into this because one of the pathways I took into this, in being more of a public spokesperson, or whatever you want to call it, figure, trying my best, doing a little activism, was getting, as I mentioned, more in touch with heritage. I didn't really come from a political background myself. I'm not one of these people that was reading liberal philosophers and then libertarian philosophers and then more right-wing philosophers. I personally don't even really use left-wing, right-wing, things like that for myself. A lot of what got me into it was either aesthetics going on in the popular culture, the war on beauty, things like that were kind of proto-red pills for me. But then also, as I said, sensing and looking for things that were more eternal in our people, the spirit. Jason has this great term that he's coined, and he said it to me the very first time we spoke, when we did an interview together that became this very show over 3 years ago. I remember you saying this to me, Jason, biospirit, and I immediately got that, because it's the wedding the mental, physical, and the spiritual, which I know, again, AFA and what Steve McNallen has presented and kind of brought back up from these folk faiths, from what I know, if I may say, seems very much in line with what you guys are about. I like that when I read the As a True book by Mr. McNallen, is that it very much looks at this holistic view of things, and that very much resonates with me. So looking to the things, again, that are eternal in our people, the characteristics, the instincts that we have, and how we manifest our spirit into the world. That was very fascinating to me, and to learn more and to read some about that got me personally deeper into caring about and identifying for our heritage as people of European descent. So now that I've said my little background, maybe to give some context, how much do you see that kind of thing from the people who check out AFA?
Huge. That's why earlier I was describing people, gravitating that way as traditional minded. There was things that we always, as a folk, valued. And until very recently, that was accepted. And what I think people have found, you mentioned for decades, but really accelerating in the past few years, has been pretty much a war on anything that, our grandparents would have found moral and upright and valuable. And so a lot of people have come because of that. And you mentioned the anti-white sentiment out there. When people have been, you find this a lot, but when people have been denied value for who they are, they become very aware that what bonds them together in that persecution is their heritage, and so it makes them want to look into that heritage. And I think that a lot of people have come home to the Austrian Folk Assembly, but I think that the way the world has been, they've pushed a lot of people towards looking into their ancestry and looking into their ancestral faith. So that's been a positive through the various social changes we've seen in the past however many years. It's brought a lot of our people home because they've seen a soulless situation on the outside, and they've wanted to come into something that has more of what you mentioned is eternal with our folk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think accounts for that beautiful turn, as you were saying? And we've seen this too, something Jason and I have been observing increasingly. It's a great thing, is that turn from people who are a little more on the fringe, which, we do want to be compassionate about that too, because there is a sense of the people who are usually going to be most open-minded to things that are outside of the mainstream have been left aside by the mainstream for some reasons. And a lot of them might be very well-intentioned people. They're just looking for something in their lives, or they're a little lost. Obviously, some people, it's all different situations. Some people might not have all the social intelligence, or they may have been kind of warped by certain ideas about violence and things like that. And obviously we can't countenance that. We tell people, if you want to do that kind of thing, you go talk about that elsewhere, not here. And we're here for you if you want to come back. But there's still that general umbrella of kind of a fringe thing. And I think we all have a sense of what that might mean and some of the different characters you might encounter. And then there's this turn that you're describing over the last few years towards a wider swath of people who just want something wholesome and healthy in their lives, and people that want good community, and they want to contribute, they want to feel their lives are meaningful. And there's a tremendous focus on family. You said that there are children at so many events, just ubiquitous at all the AFA things. What do you think's accounted for that turn over the last few years, that growth?
I think there's been a couple of different factors. If I could kind of sum up what I think the difference is a positive versus a negative focus. I think a lot of the fringe people that had an interest early on wanted to be Ausatru because they're not Christian, or they wanted to be Ausatru because they're not this or they're not that. What I specifically in my time as Australia Gothi have tried very hard to do is focus exclusively on what we do like, what we do support, what we are about, the things we do value. And we found a lot of people coming here to be Ausatru, not to just not be whatever it was that they were that wasn't working.
That's beautiful. I like that a lot.
Well, and I think it's also about building instead of tearing down. We have a tremendous optimism within the AFA now about what we can do together and the things that we can build. And it's one of the, beautiful things that we experienced during 2020, when so many things were slowing down and being stifled by, all of the things that occurred last year. We got 2 new Hofs. We had our largest gathering ever. We really came together on what we could build within our community, even if, things weren't going the way we liked in the greater community we find ourselves in. So I think that focus on positivity internally, while so much in the world is focused on negativity, has made positive-minded building people come towards the Astro Folk Assembly, and we've really benefited from that.
Yeah. I've also seen, I can't remember where this was, but I remember listening to a live stream. It might have been you with Stephen McNallen. I think it was at least one of you. And I think he mentions in his book as well, if I'm not mistaken, outreach and just doing things that communities do. You find yourself in a certain area, in a certain region, and you say, how can we be a beneficial presence here? So you might show up and help at a food bank, help people who have been affected by a certain situation in the town, and maybe they're down on their luck. It doesn't matter if they're part of your community or not. You're just going out there and saying, we want to show up and we want to help out. What kinds of things have gone on there, and What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think certainly in recent years, at least, and probably before, but I know for a fact during my time in leadership, we have very noble-minded folks that want to be a positive part of their community, and not for PR. They want to be a positive part of their community because it's the right thing to do, and we're good to people. So we've seen a lot of like environmental cleanup stuff. We have a group in Wisconsin that is doing adopt a highway stuff. But one of the best things that came our way was the opportunity to partner with the food bank in Yuba County, where our first Hof, Odenshof, is located. And it's in this little town called Brownsville, and that area is just ravaged every year by fires, a lot of poverty, a lot of people struggling in those hills. And they went around and they'd asked for help from a lot of the local churches, and the local churches weren't interested. So they reached out to us, and we jumped right on it, jumped right in, and I've been distributing food ever since. So that's been about 2.5 years now of steadily once a month giving out food, helping that community. Recently, we've taken that over entirely as ourselves, and we're 2 months into hosting our own food pantry there. But that's been amazing, and it's I believe it's really helped the folks in Brownsville. It certainly brought us closer together with the community and built a really good relationship with them there. And we're currently in the process of establishing food-based charity in both Murdock, Minnesota, and Linden, North Carolina, where our other two Hofs are located.
It was what I had heard about. Yeah, rang a bell when you said it. Was it Brownsville?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I had heard about the food bank there. And kudos to you all. That's a great thing to be doing. What can you tell us then about the kinds of values that you want to engender in people, and if you have any specific examples, without obviously giving away too much personal information about someone, even if you've seen changes in people who kind of blossom and open up into sharing more of their talents and reaching more of their potential once they're in a positive community like this, and once they're able to not be shackled by all that guilt and those, again, meme pathogens of all the anti-whiteism that's around, and kind of just breathe easy, be around people with similar values, be around people who aren't negative, but rather positive about our heritage.
Well, I suppose there's two things. There's a lot of little things, but two really big categories. One, we try extremely hard to encourage nobility in our people, and to remind them that being noble people, that was how we defined ourselves initially. And going out and thinking about things in terms of what the noble thing to do is in a given situation, and lifting yourself up, carrying yourself with a certain amount of dignity. And I think it dovetails with the other part of that, which is having an attitude towards success. I think we've all seen, if we've been involved in taking a concern for our people over the past years and decades, there was an attitude that was very prevalent, and I think we still face a little bit of it, of, well, we can't win, we can't be successful, so we might as well let it all hang out and lose gloriously or whatever. And we don't want any part of that. We want to win. Good. Let's focus on what we can do. Let's focus on what we can build and accomplish. If we start the game realizing we're going to lose and planning how to lose, never get anywhere. And so we've been focused on the idea of losing doesn't come into our minds. We're going to win. So how do we win? Mm-hmm. What victories can we achieve? What can we accomplish? And when people are focused on accomplishment and victory, they do stuff that they didn't, their mind wouldn't even let them conceive as a possibility. Right. So building each other up, building pride in ourselves, in our community and where we come from, and trying for, swinging at the pitch, trying for the things we want. And they sound really, really simple, but it's made all the difference in the world. And, you mentioned what change it's done to people. I've watched I've watched so many people build confidence in themselves. So many young, especially young white men, get involved and build a lot of self-confidence that they didn't have. I've watched families grow in the AFA. I met my wife at an AFA event, and now we have a lovely daughter. All the children being born. You know, another thing that always hurts me is when I hear young white couples or young white individuals questioning whether or not they should have a family. You know, like, the world's so messed up, you know, who are we to bring kids into that thought process? It hurts my heart when I hear that. And it's been beautiful in the AFA to just see all these families. And I think that's another sign of self-confidence and hope and excitement for the future. So we've seen that a lot individually. We've seen a lot of people with various things in their past. We've seen people with criminal pasts. We've seen people with addiction problems master those things and get the things they want in their life. We've had some guys that spent a lot of time locked up, a lot of time in a really bad place, never thought they could get a degree in a career that they wanted, never thought they could have a family, never thought they could do these things because, again, their mind was focused on losing, not on winning. I've watched so many of those guys succeed and build a beautiful life for themselves.
That's great.
And as a group, we all benefit. The more of our people can achieve that and can get the life that they want, a life that's fitting for our people, it raises us all up. So it's been really beautiful to watch that over the past few years.
That is. I popped into my head with something you said in the beginning about how you're in 14 different countries. What is that like? Getting the little communications from people who participate in this in other countries, and especially we're always curious to hear about within the great true diversity within European peoples, because we are definitely not that stereotype, unfortunately, sometimes of Americans who think in just because we're all of European descent, sometimes people, especially in Europe on the old continent, I think some Americans just use this word white. We use the word white just because it's in the common vernacular. Everyone knows what it means. It means you're of European heritage. But we like to say that in our vision, as you said, when we win, the different ethnicities within that wider umbrella of our peoples and civilization will become even more of what they are. So there's all of these different iterations, even regionalisms. Obviously, the United States is a huge place, and there's a lot of different white ethnic regions, you know. But we're always curious to hear when we either have an international guest or someone who's traveled, or in your case, someone who's at the helm of an organization that has members internationally outside of the U.S., about the themes, again, that tie us and bind us, and the common concerns, the common ways of looking at things, the common bond that we share, even across the distances.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think first, where most of our international membership, we have members in Australia and New Zealand. We've got some members in Norway and Denmark, but our primary Scandinavian members are in Sweden. We have a really thriving group of people in Sweden. We have 2 kindreds in Sweden. We have 1 kindred in Ireland. And we've got a couple of folks in South Africa as well. And I think that certainly in the West, whether our people choose to see the commonality of whiteness as a thing or not, they're aware that other people see it as a thing, and they find themselves in a category where it is self-evident that we have an interest as a group of people, and they appreciate that. I think we've seen, I mentioned earlier about tradition, but we've seen in all of these Western nations a huge lack of those things that we traditionally valued, the virtues that we used to define men by and look up to with reverence, the dignity that we used to look at women with, the values that built our societies, because they built them so well and we're so comfortable. There's been a really nasty backlash against that, and this is a way of preserving and holding on to those. You talked earlier about beauty. They're attacking beauty itself, at least beauty as expressed by our people and by our folk. So when people see that, and it's a shame that it comes to this, but I think it takes the absence of something or a fear of the loss of something sometimes for people to appreciate it and for the light bulb to come on that it's something they need to take an active interest in preserving. And I think we've seen that, certainly we see it here, but I think that's a common thread we see internationally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to say, if I could jump in really quick, as we are, I guess, right around maybe roughly the halfway mark, folks. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you get them in. You can do it on Entropy. If you want to financially gift, you can financially gift there as well. You can also financially gift over on Cash App. And of course, you all know that every financial gift on tap is shared equally, Jared and myself, with our guest. I do want to point out that I have attended a couple of the get-togethers of the Lansdale True Folk Kindred in Pennsylvania, and they were magnificent. Cliff and Katie are wonderful people, and there were indeed, I can vouch for what Matt is saying, there were indeed families. They had babies, and they were running around, and crying babies and happy babies and sad babies, and that's a wonderful thing. Babies in every emotional state. Just as long as they're there and their smiles are there and they're getting love from our people, rather than the hatred of anti-whiteism, self-hatred of anti-whiteism, being taught to hate their people, therefore themselves. And I do also have, I was gifted this drinking horn here. If I could just show you all this.
Nice.
This Katie herself made this, and it has, I guess it's my name in runes, and then something else. I don't know if you can see it. It's carved right into it there. It's this wonderful. It's very, you can see it there. It looks like it's a splendid gift, and thank you all very much. I'll put that back shortly. But I went on a hike, and then I went to Thoroughbloat. I think I probably pronounced it wrong there, but it was a wonderful time. And I was telling Matt before we got started today that I've been in the white sympathetic spheres for over 2 decades. And over that 2 decades, I've been a member of different groups, but I've helped far more groups and attended far more groups get-togethers and festivals and parties, and looking for the truth, looking for what will reach our people, looking for and experimenting, as you all know, by the way, and adding new ideas to the work that we were doing with the psychological defense, to the psychological warfare that is waged against us, that we articulate and detail the practice of in Go Free. And I attended over those years a great many pagan get-togethers. Some of those, it's kind of funny because I got invited. I would be invited to events. They would say, "Oh, well, Jason, there's going to be this event over here in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, whatever it might be. It's going to be here's the address. Just tell them that whatever, this guy's name said that he told you it was going on." I would show up. Nobody would know who I was. And they were, of course, I'm always clean cut and nice guy. My car's clean. I'm clean. And sometimes people would look at me a little, askance, wondering, why is this cop showing up here in the middle of our, but people it always warmed up to me. It was a wonderful thing. But I have to say, there were, and this was at the time, I can also say that Matt is 100% correct. There was a period when all of the white sympathetic spheres had to deal with cranks, and they were showing up by the dozen, and there had to be a decision to be made, and it ended up being sort of similar across all the different white sympathetic spheres. And that was, what do you do with the cranks? They add numbers, and that looks good to potential members, prospects out there, followers, practitioners, whatever it might be. But then once the people show up, they have conversations with these people, and they say, "Oh my God, I'm going to flee from there." Well, it was good that the AFA, they handled the cranks the same way that the rest of the white sympathetic spheres, or most of the white sympathetic spheres, explicit white sympathetic spheres, decided to get rid of them. Thank heavens for that, because these people the majority of them are just socially inept, awkward, and they don't fit in, and so they want to be somewhere, and they don't really care about Western kind, or what they want to get there, and they want to talk about the earth being on the head of a needle or whatever it might be, and just run normal folks off. So it was a good thing that they were run off. Having said that, the AFA, even when I went and I participated with Cliff and Katie's work, this is some of the best folks that I've come across in the pagan spheres, and good people, normal people, thank God. And so I was happy to participate, and I will, if invited again, I'll participate in other events in the future. But I just really wanted to vouch for what Matt was saying, that they have a lot of normal folks. And there was also this, in the pagan spheres, and I think a lot of people know about this, and there's obviously still a touch of it. These antique nationalists, we refer to them as these people who laud some piece of history from 100 years ago or so, and then they want to imitate that. And we're those folks. I mean, when you come across them, I mean, you deal with them as you deal with them. But I didn't have any encounter of that sort at the Lansdale True Folk Kindred. And we have, I don't know, Matt, if you know, we have reported on the growth of the AFA with, I guess it was it the Baldershoff in Minnesota, and they bought a church building, and then there was some contention there. And now we understand there to be some harmony there between the True folks and the townspeople. I wonder if you might be able to speak to that for a moment, so that folks can see that once there is interaction with True, then things smooth out. The misconceptions and the like, they end up getting smoothed out before we continue with what Mr. George had for you.
Well, there's kind of three phases. First, when we get a Hoff, assuming that the media doesn't come in to poison the well, there's no problem. But we saw in Murdoch, Minnesota, the media come in and manufacture outrage that wasn't there. We candidly found reporters getting frustrated that they were going door to door, try to find the outrage, and it wasn't forthcoming. But they spent a lot of time and effort to generate rage and generate problems. But when we looked into who it was all outside people. It wasn't the community itself. Ever since our people have been there remodeling and building and working on Baldershoff, they've had nothing but positive interaction with the community. And that's increased every couple of weeks, every week that we're out there. We've made good friends with our neighbors. And that's going to get even better as we start doing more charity and more community interaction that way. But there's, we had a lot of threats that a bunch of people were going to show up and they were going to bust people in, and all kind of craziness was going to happen at our grand opening. And when we had our dedication of Baldershoff, there's no problems, just a bunch of beautiful people gathered to worship our gods. It was a really, really nice thing. And we've seen that. We certainly saw that in Brownsville with Odysee. We've seen positive community interaction with all the man on the street folks that we meet in North Carolina at Thorshoff. The common denominator, if there's ever a problem, is the media telling the community they should be scared, them being scared, and then them meeting us and not being scared anymore. So it's been all the real life interaction has been really, really amazing. And I'm trying hard to think now, because I want to be honest with you. We have not had any negative in-person interaction with anybody in either of those three communities. We've had a lot of positive interaction, though. A lot of people just drive by and wave and, wish us well.
That's great.
And I just want to say quickly, Jared, please, you'll just one moment, that when I was with the Lansdale True Folk Kindred, there was no hostility. And for all of and I'm mentioning this for all of our Christian and Catholic, Mormon brothers and sisters out there who are going free, practicing go free, there was no hostility for Christians. The respect for Christianity, Catholicism, Mormonism, no hostility. So if you've had interaction, not every pagan is the same pagan. It's just like not every Christian denomination is the same Christian, or you have a variety. So if you've come across a pagan and they were just vicious as all heck when it came to Christianity, it didn't happen, at least as far as I saw in the AFA. Cliff was, in fact, he spoke about respect for Christianity and the different faiths that our people might be practicing. And that is definitely what we do in the practice of Go Free. And that's why Go Free is universal. It works. It's a practice that works everywhere, and empowers all of our people in all of their religions or atheism or whatever it might be, and all of their patriotism. It empowers them in all of these different areas. That's definitely the kind of thing, because we know that what matters right now is white well-being. All of the other things are the sort of adornment to what we put onto our particular tastes and the like. And we likened it before, Mr. George and I have, to the Alamo, and two of the soldiers there arguing over what the future economy of Texas would be like. I mean, there's just no time for that sort of thing. We're going to allow each other to worship the way each other worship, or be a patriot for our different countries, or different patriotism. But at the same time, we're all going to come together for the well-being of our people. No question about that. But Mr. George, you were about to say something.
Oh, well, no, you didn't cut off anything. And, we have a free-flowing conversation here. I see some people in the chat asking questions. There's a few things I want to get to before we get to some chat questions. And some of this might address some of the questions in the chat. Why don't we stay on the theme, though, that Jason's kind of opened up, because I know we all wanted to talk about this anyway. So we'll go with what we've already been discussing. Obviously, what you do, Matt, one of your roles, I would imagine, I would use the word ambassador, it sounds like, both within your community and then again to the rest of the world. Are any general towns you find yourself in when you're in a Hof, let's say, like you've been describing? And as we've been discussing, there's this pervasive anti-whiteism that's going around. It's been coming to a boiling point. We know it's been building for a long time. When I was putting in AFA into a search engine earlier, obviously, I'm sure you well know this, most of the first search results, unfortunately, say things like supremacist and hate group, and we get the same thing. That if you have any whiff of being positive whatsoever about your European heritage, it's automatically branded that. One of the silver linings, as you were saying in your example of people meeting you, and we have our own versions of this, is the cognitive dissonance. When people actually begin to check out what we do and who we are, it's so vastly different from how the media portrays it, that a lot of that can actually work in our favor. But it definitely takes a certain type of person to be able to navigate that. And I can imagine what's on your shoulders as a leader and a representative of this organization. So just a general question, just to address it through any angle you see fit, but anything you could share about navigating that tricky territory of not watering down what it is you do, what your convictions are, but knowing that the average person out there is steeped in this programming that they got through the media and education their whole lives, and that there is that barrier to break through for them to even begin to think about anything positive about their heritage and the people they come from and celebrating that, etc.
Well, you made a good point that the media has overplayed its hand, and the forces that are arrayed against us have overplayed their hand, and they've painted, as you said, anybody with the slightest inkling of pride in where any white people with the inkling of pride in themselves or where they come from, as these horrible, bigoted, supremacist racists that they're expecting to see a monster. And when you show them a noble, respectable, decent looking human being treating them fairly, they don't know how to merge those two in their head because they don't go together. The reason they don't go together is because it's not real. But
right.
Yeah, the best thing, but you mentioned programming, and I don't think that you defeat programming by eloquent arguments. Most of the people that want to engage you in an argument over this topic in this day and age. It's not a quest for truth. It's a quest for gotcha or to virtue signal to their friends. They're not interested in what you have to say. What I found is the most valuable thing, and these are with people that are potentially friends, all the way to people who are hard on the other side, is being the example that you talk about wanting your people to be.
Right. That's it.
Look nice. It's one of those things, and I've seen this. I've seen it in a lot of real world situations. If you look nice and you look happy and you have a nice looking family with you, they may parrot the same things that they've been taught to parrot, but you can hear the lack of conviction in their voice. They want to see the monster. Yeah, they want to see the monster that they've been shown. And when they don't see that, whether they admit to it or not, it forces a process in their head. And I've seen that a lot. And so that's in more extreme circumstances. When dealing with regular folks, grocery store interactions are different. But as far as people in your personal life, if you establish yourself as a good person and a trustworthy person, when they find out, things that are politically incorrect that you think in relation to your pride in yourself, they look at those things entirely different because they see you as a person and they know that their friend is not this monster the media paints their friend as. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I think that's the best thing you can do is show up looking good, acting positive, and never acting guilty or ashamed.
Right.
Sometimes when we're embarrassed because the situation we're in, we act a certain way and it just signals, guilt to the other side. Don't do that. Have your head up, have your chest out, be proud of who you are, be open to talking to people. Never be ashamed of our folk and where we come from. We're a beautiful and an amazing people that have done so much for this world.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine some of it, from what I know, and I don't even know if you really use this word, but when you see, again, you do little internet searches and you see that there's various points of view in what's generally, as an umbrella term, called pagan communities or people that are interested in paganism, there is a more contemporary view that's been, I guess, in vogue post-World War II, and definitely came to the fore in the 60s. That's kind of this cafeteria style. And, I'm a person who I can understand to a certain degree. I have an interest in different spiritual practices from around the world. And on an intellectual level, it could be very interesting and titillating. I know for some, they want to feel that even if they take it on as a personal practice, that they have the freedom to engage with whatever they want to engage with. And again, on a certain level of an interest, I could see that. But they don't seem to understand, and I'm curious, however you frame this or what your response to this is, because I know this is often the criticism levied against you within these circles of well, why can't I participate in this if I'm of a different heritage? Ergo, you are these monsters. Not that it's always as simple as pointing out the flip side thing. I know that sometimes that's kind of a quick, easy internet level of argument, and sometimes the argument needs something a little more robust than that. But sometimes, as a quick example, it does work, where you could say, look, what if the three of us, what if me, you, and Jason showed up to a group about ancient Chinese folkways, or a particular group of people who are from a particular part of Africa who are celebrating the way that their tribes used to do things in Africa. Sure, they might welcome us if it was a friendly kind of situation. Best case scenario, they might welcome us as guests. We might be curious in a cultural level. Oh, what do these people do? How do they view the universe? What are their folk practices? But for us to show up as three men of European descent and then begin to participate in the rituals, begin to enmesh ourselves in the community, begin to say that we can be part of decision-making process. Well, if we did something like that, it would be seen absolutely as overstepping our bounds as I'm sure there'd be much more colorful and much more pointed language than that. We'd be colonists and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And no one ever seems to think of it the other way. The second you say you could be the most wise, balanced person in the world, but the second you say in any way, shape, or form that sometimes there is a space for us people of European descent because our culture, our heritage is ours to steward. And to speak again to my example, we could be guests, but me, you, and Jason could never be stewards of a Chinese organization or an African folk organization or anything. Take your pick. This is ours to steward. And even on a metaphysical level, I don't want to get too out there, but I've done my own writing about this because I had to think this through for myself when I began all this. I just think metaphysically it's incorrect because whatever your religious beliefs in this plane of existence, in the world, earthly life, meaning is from particulars. Love is not this broad thing. You love your wife and not other women. And the fact that you love your wife and not other women is what makes that sacred. And there's an element of that with your folk and your heritage as well. We're this, we're not that. And it's who we are. It's ours to steward. We're the continuum of that story. So going back to where I began with the kinds of criticisms from the neo-pagan types or the ones who are associated with, we just call it all anti-Whiteism, but what some people might call like the lefty pagans. What kind of approach do you take with that criticism of the fact that sometimes you do have to say, look, when push comes to shove, this is for us, people of European descent. You particularly focus on the northern folkways, and there's really nothing to defend there. But how do you defend it for those who do need to hear an explanation? And let's say are coming to you in good faith. Let's say they are somewhat open-minded to hear what your argument would be to that.
Well, so a couple of particulars, really specifically on that. I don't have an argument because it's not a discussion. I'm happy to explain to them what our position is and why it's our position, but it's not, it's not open to their approval or disapproval. Right. So I really don't try to defend it or justify it to them. I tell them simply why. And quite frankly, we believe that our gods are our most ancient ancestors, and that this is part of our birthright from them. This is how we relate to the divine. And I think that it is the ultimate in diversity and tolerance that we don't claim that our gods are the gods of all these other races. These are our gods. They created us and have a unique relationship with us. We fully believe in the validity of these other ethnic groups, of their ethnic folk religions, and the legitimacy that those have to them and to their destiny. We absolutely believe that. But you mentioned the criticisms, and you'd said the criticism for, hey, I'm of a different race, why can't I practice? We very rarely get that. What we get is, well, what if this one guy that I don't know happens to be of a different race and wants to join? We get a lot of hypotheticals, but we don't have, large numbers of people of other races trying to join the AFA. They have their own things, hopefully, that are very satisfying to them spiritually.
Right.
It's largely a made-up scenario, or it's a guilt-ridden one, like, well, my cousin, married a woman of a different race and has a multiracial child. So you're telling me that I'm sorry that your cousin made that life choice. It's not on me to justify that and make you and your family feel better. That's something you guys got to deal with internally. Our position is strong and solid on it. But you mentioned a lot of this coming from the pagan spheres, and you said, you don't know if I even use that term. And I don't. We try not to. Certainly we are pagan. Get a dictionary that we are. But as far as that term's general meaning, at least here in the United States, it's a lot of very far left, it's a lot of folks that very often are looking for license for any kind of frivolity and degeneracy and eroding of tradition. And we So you ask how we deal with that. One of the big things that we've done is very clearly separating ourselves from that. There was a time the AFA had a lot of overlap with these other pagan circles. We don't have that anymore. We're doing our thing. We are practicing Ausatru. We would love for people to come practice Ausatru with us, but we don't consider ourselves part of this greater pagan milieu of people because we really don't believe we have any points of commonality in that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear what you said about the hypotheticals. It seems to make sense. And again, it tracks with a lot of what we talk about here. The term I brought up before that Jason introduced me to, that I've taken on myself, biospirit, and well, many people here have. What it seems that the European man, if anything, especially in modern times, but I think that this is probably still part of our biospirit and something we need to keep in check. It's kind of a conundrum. It's something that we talk about sometimes here. We have to be aware of our own blind spots or how things can possibly go from being a quirk to this major Achilles heel. It seems like of all the peoples of Earth, that it is our people who are most likely to say, oh, I'll go check out this Amerindian shaman group or something like that. Like, we'll be the ones. And I even see that in myself, to be honest. I'm a very outward looking kind of person. I have an open personality type. I'm highly creative. So I see that in myself. And and as I said, I had to do a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, to kind of harmonize the different instincts within myself before I stepped out, because I wanted to be clear and have integrity with what I do. But what do you think that is? How do you think we navigate that? Obviously, the conditions of the modern world have exacerbated that tremendously. But I still think that it speaks to some kind of outward-looking adventurousness that our people have. Maybe it's twinned with the same drive that saw us sail ships across oceans and things like that. But there is that stereotype of the white man who wants to go native.
So I think that there's two parts to it, and the healthy and the good part is what you just mentioned, the Faustian instinct of our folk to search for that far horizon and to surpass that, to explore, to expand our will as far as we can, to learn new things. That curiosity is a hallmark of our folk, and I think that's Absolutely. A really good thing. But what's become coupled with it and metastasized in it is a awareness of our own lack of deeply held convictions and deeply held traditions. And I think we've seen this grow in the West. We've watched it during, the Enlightenment or other periods, but it's really come to a fever pitch now to where our own traditions and our own values have been eroded to the point that we often look to these much more traditional cultures and that they've been able to have that integrity. The cultures that you mentioned that we look into, if you look at them, they're not the melting pots that the modern West, certainly the United States, have become. They're homogenous cultures with a living tradition that's ancient and that's celebrated. And I think that there's a part of us that longs for that and wishes we had it. And so we try to find it out there. And I think it's the same drive that we do in the Ausatru Folk Assembly. Instead of trying to find it out there, we try to find it in here, and reconnect with it and rebuild, I guess, reforge the sword that was broken. And that's fundamental to what we do. But I think that it speaks to a longing in the part of European man to have tradition and to have some homogenous culture and value and beliefs that are ours.
It's certainly been hidden from us, obfuscated. Do you find that sometimes people who come to AFA had dipped their toes in other communities first? Like I said, the Amerindian Sweat Lodge, or trekking across India, hanging out with Hindu gurus or something. And as you said, You can certainly learn things from there. You know, there could be cultural exchange. Again, I'm not. I wouldn't be true to myself if I was saying no one should ever do that. My thing is, if you have a strong core, if you have a strong anchor, then you can kind of venture out into the world because you know where your home port is. You have this nucleus to return to internally, and then also with community, people you know, what you practice, like what you do. So do you find that people were kind of trekking around and checking out other cultures first, and then they said, this is what I was looking for, but it's actually my thing. It's in my blood. It's in my spirit.
So it's a tale of two Indians. Originally, I'd say back in the 80s and 90s, we had folks that would try to find that within Native American circles. They would try to get involved in different sweat lodge things like you mentioned, and they try to find that there. Fortunately, some people who were involved with us were told very, directly by some Native American elders, that they ought to drink from their own well, and that brought them to Asatru. Mm-hmm. Recently, you find it more with people who have delved deeply into Hinduism or into Buddhism and, the other Indians, and spent that time exploring that. And at least that harkens back to a shared value back in ancient times and to a shared root civilization. But yeah, you find that from time to time. Now, I think you find it a lot less now than you did back 20 or 30 years ago. You had a lot of people looking in a lot of different ethnic traditions then. Now, most of the people that come to the Asatru Folk Assembly have been, focused on ethnically congruent things up until this point, or seemingly so with different sects of Christianity. We also have a lot of people coming from atheism. This is a little bit off your question, but not entirely.
Take it wherever you need.
Well, I was going to say, early on, there was a lot of people with a very strong Christian tradition in their family. They were raised in the church. And so the transition from Christianity into Asatru, has its own steps to go through. Recently, with the drop in Christianity and the drop in regular church attendance, people who are in their 20s coming into Asatru now, very few of them have that strong church background. They're often coming in as atheists or with some kind of vague philosophical spirituality, but without a real religion. So what we're adjusting to is not people converting from one faith to our faith, but people converting from no faith to our faith. And that looks very different. But that's what we face most often now.
I remember that phrase from Stephen McNallen's book about drinking from your own well, and someone he knew that tried to check out the sweat lodges. I remember that anecdote. But that phrase, drink from your own well, I think that's just a great little powerful little collection of words. We have, excuse me, several people in the chat retyped that after you said it. It obviously hits home. It's one of those that just cuts through. You get it. You immediately get it when you say drink from your own well. On that note, I'm glad it's kind of wrapped up to this point, and I've been really enjoying this. And I know that chat is as well. We're seeing some great questions and comments. And before we get to those and some of Jason, he'll take the questions from the chat and some of his own comments. I have one more, and it actually goes perfectly with what you've been saying. And it's a broad question. I'm sure we could do a whole show or series of shows just on this. So I guess you'll just have to focus on one aspect. But take your pick. Take us into some kind of gathering or celebration that engenders this experience of being connected to this continuum, maybe a holiday, some examples you do on a certain holiday festival day, anything you think is most appropriate that would maybe paint a picture for some of the people listening about what it really looks and feels like to be participating in something like this.
So this is a typical typical AFA event at one of our HOFs or one of our national gatherings. Families come together. A lot of folks dressing nicely. Other folks just coming in what they feel comfortable in. Whole families, not just segments, not just the guys, not just the ladies, but entire families coming and spending the day together. We share meals together throughout the day. We don't just share eating the meals, but our ladies get together in the kitchen and are preparing food. The guys are gathered around the grill, making stuff happen. We get groups of people gathered around, a fire pit or gathered around inside talking about their lives and what's going on. What you really find very often is people that, didn't know each other before that day, meeting new people, and a really nice feeling of family happening before they leave. It feels like we hear this over and over again. It's like coming home. Well, you feel like you've known these people forever and you've known them for an afternoon. Two of the most special things to me at AFA events are all the kids get together. They don't know anybody. They've never seen each other. And within maybe minutes at most, they're all good friends. They're all playing together. They're all getting along. And I guess this segues into the second part of that. You get the older children watching the younger children. You have parents and mothers who are comfortable taking a breath and letting their kids play and not worried that the people there were, bad intentioned. And that's a really special thing we have. So we spend a lot of time hanging out and talking and getting to know one another and sharing in the day's activities. If it's a whole day event, we'll maybe have 2 or 3 different discussions about something. Often we'll break off in a men's group and a women's group to talk in those contexts about our faith and our lives and things we can do to better fulfill those roles in it. We'll get together, and the main worship ceremony that we do is called a bloat. And depends, very often we'll get together outside in a big circle. At some of our HOFs, we'll gather inside in kind of a square or a circular formation. Inside, we'll focus a lot of that attention on, we have some beautiful murals of Thor and of Balder, respectively, and we'll focus our attention that way. And we'll gather around in that circle, and we'll pass a horn of meat around. The Gothi or the Githia will carry the horn from person to person. And one of those rounds with the horn is a giving round, where you imbue that horn with your positivity, with your loyalty, with your love, with your thanksgiving, with your worship for the gods. We'll pour that horn out. We'll take a second horn around and either drink from it, or if it's a large crowd, we'll asperge it with a evergreen tine. And that's the giving round. That's where we're sharing the blessings of that God, of our gods, to the folk. It sounds very simple, and I think fundamentally it is, but the theme of the day is communion, not in a Catholic sense, but in the same sense of sharing as a group. We share our food. We share the preparation of the food. We share our energy with the gods, and they share their energy with us in return. And it sounds really simple, but it can be so very powerful for the people in that circle. Then we'll do that. We'll come together, usually have our big meal that evening. And then in the evening, with the people that can stay and that stay around a little bit later, we'll have what's called a sumble. And a sumble is a ritualized drinking ceremony where people will make toasts. And those usually have 3 rounds. One for our gods, one for our ancestors, and then one of the rounds is for the heroes, where you may raise a horn to somebody you admire, a friend of yours that has done something special that way. But that's a time where folks really like to open up. My wife just brought by her.
We have someone about to steal the show.
Yeah.
Somebody requested earlier that I let her pop on if she could. I hope that's all right.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen her on Instagram, but please introduce us.
What a beauty.
Yeah.
This is Aubrey Rose Flavel. She's the most beautiful girl in the entire world.
Yes, indeed.
Don't you dare tell me otherwise.
She is beautiful. She is beautiful.
We are so very blessed to have her in our life. She's the most amazing little girl. Yeah, there's a lot of this at AFA events too, is sitting around with our kids and in our future like this. But yeah, so I was going to say at those symbols, people will get very emotional. So anyways, they'll get really emotional. They'll often, in the ancestors round specifically, that's my wife, Mandy. She says hello.
Hello.
They'll tell really personal stories about their loved ones that have passed. And with sharing a drink and doing it that way, people really open up, and they open up. It shocks me how fast that people open up with very deep things about themselves. And I think it's part of that community that gets built together so quickly when you do it in a sacred environment. So that's what the day looks like. We get together, we finish our symbol, people give each other hugs and say their goodbyes and, make their way back to where they're going. A lot of hugs. We're really fortunate, whatever anybody's personal thoughts are of the COVID response and things in 2020, we were very fortunate that we were able to get together as a church together and worship. We were able to get together and hug one another, look each other face to face, spend that time together when so many people weren't. Some churches still aren't able to. So we were very blessed that we were able to do that. That's a really special thing about having our own HOFs and having that shelter from the storm to where we can come together and have some normality, even when things out in the world are looking really crazy sometimes.
Well, you painted a beautiful picture, Matt, and it's been very interesting. Not that we're quite done yet. Your daughter, I was saying to your wife in the chat, glows with health and love.
Yeah.
You both are so blessed, and that is so beautiful. Oh, warmed my heart. I know I could speak for Jason too. You saw that couldn't walk the smiles off our faces. But thank you for painting that picture. We have the chat is very positive, reflecting a lot of your own values, what you talk about. Some are here from AFA, came over from you. And as I said in the beginning, if you missed it, Jason and I warmly welcome you and thank you for checking us out. If this is your first time here and you're coming over because you are friends with or know Matt here. And some of the people aren't in the AFA, of course, and they're just asking questions and genuinely curious and open about it. So I really like what I'm seeing in the chat. I know Jason has some questions in the last segment of the show. So Jason, what's been going on? Take it away.
Well, thank you. Everybody has been so excited about the conversation and grateful for the conversation. It's a wonderful thing. We practice the exact same things, Matt, that you've been talking, a lot of the exact same things that you've been talking about, Matt, with the positivity. It's all about the positivity. It's all about the victories. And we've been having a huge number of victories. In fact, I was just speaking with the Natarific, a great champion in service to white well-being, practicing going free. He is the head of what we refer to as the outreach team. And they had a small effort today where they went out and spreading the lexicon, spreading the dialectics of the practice, and had an enormous victory. People, normal folks out there, MAGA type folks, ordinary sensibilities, folks, our people, brothers and sisters, immediately taking up the lexicon and dialectics successfully, and thereby changing the milieu and the context in which the conversations, the arguments, the legal battles, the politics, everything ends up taking place. That's why it's so important to go out there and to have victories at every level. The symbolic victories are the only victories, number one, that we can really have, because you have a victimizer that is supremely powerful, but the symbolic victories are also far more powerful than any other type of victory. And so these little victories, all of us combine together, building one on top of the other, they gain momentum, and together in their aggregate, they become that tsunami that the anti-white oligarchy, this evil regime cannot hold back. It's a tomorrow that they can hold back. And we often refer to it as the Western sunrise, and we are lifting that sun into the heavens ourselves. So really glad to hear that you all are focused that way over at the AFA. I know Mr. George, absolutely. And as you were saying these things, Matt, Mr. George and I have had so many conversations. I know when you were saying those things, he was the exact same sort of fireworks were going off in his head as was mine. Let's get to some of these questions, these financial gifts that folks have given, and they have some questions, I think, some of them, and then we have some, I think, a couple of questions without financial gifts. So let's jump on over to Cash App first, and we will refresh the page. I will say, as it loads, a big thank you to everybody who showed up for this wonderful TAP episode. We were really looking forward to this, and I know that folks in the AFA community were also really looking forward to seeing their global leader on with us. We have at the very beginning of the show today, Olrak, financially gifting $5. Thank you so much, dear brother, saying everything you wanted to say with those $5. We also have another great champion in service to white well-being, White Student Transmission. Great to see you, brother, and thank you so much for your service to white well-being. Financially gifting $15 over on Cash App. He writes here, AW's got a head start. We're catching up and will win. The anti-whites got a head start. We are catching up and we will win. And of course, winning means recapturing our destiny. Thank you so much, White Student Transmission, on a personal level, on a family level, on a community level, on a schooling level. Recapturing our destiny is we get to define any way we see fit. The anti-whites never get to define it. Let's get a big raucous round of wild emojis for Quebec, who financially gifted $50, $50 US, $50. Thank you so much, dear brother. And saying all he wanted to say with all of those $51 bills. That's a great champion Quebec is in the always hovering, doing good work in the shadows, and we deeply appreciate him. Thank you so much for that, Quebec. And if you out there would like to financially gift over on Cash App, you'll have to do so quickly. It takes a little while to come through, and you will have an opportunity to write in there. It has a character limit, but you'll have an opportunity to write a question or statement with your gift. But thank you again, all three of you over there on Cash App. We'll spin around here, and we've got more than a handful over here on Entropy. Great to see so many champions. Starting off the day with one of our greatest champions, Yiz the Eunuch. And I feel like I should be personally overseeing the building of her statue right now. If only we had the funds. Financially gifting is $10. Thank you so much, sweet sister. And she writes, Mr. Flavel's wise words and positive demeanor inspired me to take the first steps toward learning Asatru. I just bookmarked the AFA site and would like him to recommend a video, website, or book as my first learning stone. May all our gods bless us on our path toward a bright future. Matt?
All right, I'll do all three. Website, www.runestone.org. That's our website. Got a ton of people on our contact page. You can talk to your local folk builder. Got my contact information on there. Please reach out to me if you'd like to. As far as a video, we've got several. I do a live video once a month. This will teach you a lot about contemporary, like what's going on in the AFA and how we practice. But if you look for us on YouTube, the Asatru Folk Assembly, we've got a channel on there. We've got a lot of content on there, some of Stephen McNallen's old stuff. I put things on there, like I say, I do my live once a month. What else is on there for anybody listening is when we have our national gatherings. For the last year or so, I've been making these little slideshows set to music. So you see what you'd see at one of these things. You can see what the people look like. You can see what we do looks like. You can see what our hofs look like. And it can really give you a good sense, visually of who we are and what we're about. And then as far as the book that Jason's been talking about the whole time, Asatru, A Native European Spirituality by Stephen McNallen. I would recommend you get that and read that. You can get that on the website that I sent to you. You can also get that, wherever you'd like. But it's a very good book by our founder, and it'll bring you up to speed on how we got here and where we're at.
Thank you, brother. And thank you so much, Yiz, for the financial gift and the question. We have Rob financially gifting $5. And he says, Matt, you'll have to help me out here. The title, your title, how do you pronounce that?
All's Herjargothi.
That and your last name, Flavel. What is upcoming for the AFA in the near future is Rob's question. Thank you, Rob.
Next up is Midsummer, June. Have to look at my calendar, but I'm going to say 11th, 12th, 13th, if not the weekend closest to those dates, at Odenshof in Brownsville, California. That's probably going to be our biggest event of the year. That's kind of our flagship national celebration that we've done. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a 3-day event. So that's going to be nice. We've got that coming up next in September, and I'd have to check on the exact dates in September. We've got Fall Fest, which is another one of our national events. That's going to be held at Baldershof in Murdoch, Minnesota. So we got that coming up. Right now, we're doing some stuff behind the scenes, getting some finances in order, and we're scouting out what our plan is for our next Hof that we're going to establish. This one's going to be dedicated to the god of friendly waterways and of voyages and of fishing and making use of those waterways, Njord. So Njord's Hof is upcoming. We need to figure out where we're doing that and how we're doing that. And we're planning that on the back end right now.
Nice. Well, thank you for that answer. And Rob, thank you for the gift and the question. We have fit and healthy at any age. Financially gifting $3. No amount of money can ever repay Jason for the gift of Go Free. My children will never suffer from guilt or shame due to their skin color. Thank you 1,000 times. Well, you are most welcome, fit and healthy at any age. No, they absolutely should not suffer for being a member of Western kind, for that beautiful biospirit that burns like the flash of creation in their hearts. Thank you so much for those kind words and that financial gift. And back again with another $3 financial gift, fit and healthy at any age once again. I also really like the name there. It writes, I am attempting to spread the message of Go Free at the gym, and many seem open to the idea. Is the meme, it's okay to be white, a good baby step? What has been a good approach for others? Thank you. Well, that's a fantastic question. We don't have a lot of time to dig into it. If you could come back on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and put that exact same question in the question widget on Entropy here. Remind me that you asked it here today, just in case there's the possibility that I forget. And we can address it in greater depth. But I would not use "it's okay to be white." It is a statement that is within the anti-white narrative, and we never use any speech that is inside the anti-white narrative because it is burdened with, infected with what we refer to as thought chains, premises, unspoken premises that lead you to lose the conversation, and the anti-white or the vague, the normal, the not normal, but the average person out there, brother or sister, which we refer to as a vague, leads them to outcomes and thoughts that will defeat you in conversation, make you look like the bad guy. I predicted when this came out, it's okay to be white, the first maybe 2 weeks of it, that it would be easily defeated. I shared exactly how it would be easily defeated by anti-whites and vagues. And then a non-white, anti-white student, high school student, defeated it on television, interviewed by a reporter who simply responded, of course it's okay to be white, it's just not okay to be a racist. So instead, I suppose that you have Go Free, look into Go Free, and you'll see that there are a great many ways that you can begin to discuss things with people at the gym. One of the easiest things to do, and that empowers you for the rest of the conversation, is to refer to the things that are happening to us as anti-white, to refer to the policies in the United States as anti-white, and to refer to that ideology as anti-whiteism. It's all objectionable because it's anti-white, and it is from the ideology of anti-whiteism. when you discuss things with people from that perspective. They are in our story, and they can only go wrong if they intend us harm. But come back on Sunday. We'll go into it a little bit deeper. Thank you for reaching out to the community, because it's clear that you understand that your well-being is only achievable by way of our group's well-being, our people's well-being. We have Rory financially gifting $3. Thank you so much, Rory. Do the Asatru greet one another with, I'll just say here, unique handshakes? And are there any similarities between Asatruism and Freemasonry, such as looking after one's own community? Matt.
Well, on the Freemasonry thing, real quick, I'll answer the last, or anyways, that's the first question with the Freemasonry. Wanting to do stuff to help our community, I think, is common to any group that identifies itself. But as far as I know, there's no overt tie to any kind of Asatru and Freemasonry. I'm certain that there's got to be members that there's some kind of overlap in the history of Asatru, but I'm certainly not aware of any connection to Freemasonry. The other one, as far as if we got a secret handshake, it depends who you meet. Some guys like to do the grip the forearm handshake, but most often the way that other Asatru greet each other, certainly in the AFA, is by giving each other a big hug. Some of the guys will start out with the handshake, but we'll pull them in for the hug. And I think that's probably the most common physical greeting we got in the AFA.
And that's wonderful. Can you imagine the anti-whites will have to turn that into something in their anti-white narrative? They hug. Can you imagine? They're communicating in some weird way when they. Thank you so much, Roy, for the question and the $3 financial gift. And we have our dear sweet sister, Mrs. Jess Horst, is with us. She gives us a little white emoji heart. Thank you so much, sister, and a financial gift of $15 US. Thank you so very much. She's another great champion. She can field an entire baseball team with the children that she has had. Let's spin around over here and have one more look at Cash App and see if we have anybody who snuck in here. I have a feeling we probably did. And I want to thank, as the screen loads, the great Roy Danton for moderating today, a great champion in service to white well-being for years now, and went from a not so great place to a really glorious winged and haloed place. And we're so grateful for this champion. Thank you so very much, Roy Danton. Looks like we do have the great Brad C., who is another magnificent star in the practice of white well-being. Great to see you, brother. And thank you so very much for the $20 financial gift today. Thank you. He writes with that gift, for the great stream, an exclamation point. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. That is Brad C. We have our dear sister, a wonderful woman, and always with us in service to white well-being. Her name, I Love Jesus Christ. Financially gifting $20. Thank you so much, sweet sister. And she writes, for white well-being. Indeed. And we thank you for that. And we have Art Acrobats. Yet again, another well-known champion in service to white well-being. Financially gifting $2.14. And he writes, help your people daily. I could not agree more, brother. That is a magnificent sentiment. And I think maybe that was the theme of today's TAP episode, helping each other, growing our communities, improving ourselves, being who we actually are. And when Matt's talking about people being good, looking good, putting your, what is quite common in the States, I don't know if it's common across the rest of the West. I imagine what we refer to as like your Sunday best, what you would wear to church for so long when our countries were predominantly Christian. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have the Armani attire or whatever it might be. You just clean up and you show up. And that is to demonstrate who we are, not to conceal anything. We want to be who we are rather than the villains in the anti-white narrative. that they would like us to be, and they would like all of those vagues out there to see us as. We don't want to have that. One final question that I have for Matt as we wrap up. So I'm going to ask the question, Matt, and I'll have you then answer the question. Tell folks where they can find you, and I guess you've already answered what you all are really doing next, but anything more to that specific issue. But before those two things, what is one of the most prevalent challenges to AFA members or to the greater community of Western kind? What is one, do you believe at the moment, is one of our greatest challenges, and how can the individual AFA member meet that challenge?
I think there's a couple of prongs to this, but I think one of the greatest challenges we face is isolation. When a lot of the things that tied us together have been torn down or vilified, it's very easy to feel alone. When you couple that with this rugged individualism that so many of our people have, that in a measured way can be very good, when it's been unhealthy and when it's paired with, the erosion of things that tied us together, you have a lot of little tiny islands of one by themselves. And it's very easy to feel defeated. It's very easy to feel helpless when you see your tribe is one person. The individual AFA member, and I guess anybody listening to this broadcast, can work on that by getting out of mom's basement, getting out there with somebody and celebrating, being together, working together towards a common goal. The AFA is made up of amazing individuals, but we're able to do the things we're able to do and build the beautiful things we're able to build when we act as one, when we come together and we have that community. Together we're strong, and together we're a great people. So when we start viewing ourselves as part of that great people with that great heritage, then we can be in a much more powerful position to build the kind of world that we want to live in and to fight that isolation. And I think the isolation, especially with, the protocols to deal with things last year, as far as not showing people your face, staying inside, doing more and more things from home, I think that's been very difficult for our people. So get out there, interact, become involved.
Great. Absolutely great response. Before we get your comments, any final comments you might have and where folks can find you, we just have a couple quick ones here. We're going to rapid fire at you. Let's see. We have one over on D Live that was, what is the AFA's stance on ancient Vikings in Minnesota?
We have no official stance. I went and I saw that runestone. Don't think that runestone's ancient, but the fact that there was a guy in the early 1800s that could forge it by using ancient runes in an intelligible way tells me that there's something there. There's an entrenched culture there that's really special. I don't preclude it. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's one of those questions we may never know the answer to, but we don't have an official stance on that.
All righty. And we have our dear friend Jonas over in the Czech Republic. He's got a couple here. One is, do you know of a content producer by the name of Survive the Jive? Jonas says he makes great content about European spirituality and genetics. Have you heard of Survive the Jive?
I have, and I actually got to meet him at Northwest Forum a few years ago, and he was a very nice guy. I really enjoyed meeting him. And I haven't watched everything he's put out, but I've enjoyed the things that I've watched.
Fantastic. And we'll just take one more from Jonas. And this one is, in what countries is AFA present?
United States, I'm going to miss some here. So United States, Canada, Uruguay, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Ireland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Italy, Serbia, Switzerland, South Africa, and we have doesn't really count, but we have an American stationed in Germany.
It's a good problem to have when you can't remember all the countries where you have grown. Final thoughts, brother, and where people can find you and the AFA.
Well, I've plugged it a lot. www.runestone.org. That's our website. It's got contact information for your local folk builders, for myself, anybody listening. Please feel free to email me if you need to. Email one of your folk builders, email a Gothi, but you can reach out to me directly if you have any questions or there's a way I can help you. Look us up on YouTube. Hopefully these gentlemen will put that link on. I'll send it to them later. But we have a YouTube channel that we put a lot of really nice videos we've spent time on there. Feel free to check that out. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me on the program. I'm excited to get to talk to you gentlemen. I'm also very excited to speak to your audience. I know some of them, I've gotten a chance to talk to before, and some of them have never heard of me, and I've never got to speak to them. So I'm really, really thankful for the opportunity.
It's our deep pleasure. Thank you for being with us, brother. Mr. George, final thoughts where people can find you and the great work you're doing.
Well, we're seeing people say Brazil. Is that on the list as well? Is there a chapter in Brazil?
We had some Brazilians. Unfortunately, our Brazilian membership had to part ways with us. They were under some pretty intense persecution there with their job. I hope that they come back when things settle down.
It just struck out to me, particularly because I was going to mention Uruguay anyway. That is something that we forget about, that a good deal of our folk are in the Southern Cone, which is generally called the Southern Cone of South America. And I've actually said this to Jason privately recently. We would love to speak to someone who understands what we understand and is from our background in South America, because there are certainly a lot of Europeans that went there, and they have their, I'm sure, unique perspective on things. So if anyone has any suggestions, reach out to us. We're always curious and interested to talk to all kinds of people. But Matt, I return the sentiment. I really enjoyed today's conversation, and there's just a very good feeling in the air all around. It was interesting to learn a little more about what you do and hear you lay it out so calmly and openly. Very appreciated. And as you said, anyone listening in the replay on our shared site, theafterparty.tv, again, we have over 3 years cataloged now. You can go when this is posted, just like any post. Matt's links will be there. All the relevant AFA links will be there. You mentioned, someone mentioned Survive the Jive. Jonash mentioned Survive the Jive. He was on back in June of 2019. So if you're ever curious if someone has been on with us, you can search a name, a content creator, an activist in the search bar, or you can search themes of shows, as true or native European folkways or folkism, folkish. I think those are all tags on our site, but the shows are pretty well tagged in terms of the main themes that were discussed as well. So that is the afterparty.tv. We each have our own sites as well, our own individual sites. Jason is nowhiteguilt.org, and mine is thegreatorder.com. So I also post these shows there, as well as the particular things that I do. And I know it's been a long time coming, but I should be getting back to that regular release schedule of songs very soon. Next one is wrapping up and will be sent out for mastering fairly soon. And there'll be more going on with that. So look out for announcements. The best thing, as we like to say, is to definitely bookmark our websites. We have way more control over those than any social media. But for the time being, we have to be everywhere we can be. So please do follow our social media. Mine is listed again on my website, thegreatorder.com. You go there, find all the different platforms I'm on. And Jason and I also encourage you to share this around. I like to say we need to be the algorithm. We are insanely shadow banned. So much of our follower count and subscriber count, our different individual platforms are just slow to a snail's pace. We know there's kind of shenanigans going on. We can't complain about it. We can't get down about it. Like Matt said, we will win. We do have the truth on our side, and we are aligned with what is good and beautiful and best in our spirit and in our people, and that will out. So you have to take these things in stride, be a warrior with a smile on your face. So it's a little thing, but if you can all share peer-to-peer in comment sections and emails, if you liked what you heard here, you like what we're doing, definitely check out, if you're new here, what Jason's doing. Jason does his own show on Sundays called Go Free, where he really digs deep onto what he's been testing and other people test with him, the psychological defenses against anti-Whiteism, the right language to use, as he was speaking to in the question regarding it's okay to be white. Certain things might sound good or go against the grain on the surface, and you think, oh, that sounds good. That's kind of against the PC anti-white stuff. But when you test it out in conversations, A leads to B, leads to C. Sometimes you leave a trap door open, and you can get right back into being critiqued about, us being the bad guy and all of those narratives. And so he's done tremendous work. I can't recommend enough of being friends and doing work with him the last few years and getting to know it more and more. This is an essential key to really unlock the cage around our people's minds so that we can thrive and we can become the best versions of ourselves, as we're talking about tonight. But Matt, again, kudos to what you and your community are doing. It's just wonderful to hear about the families, about the fellowship, about the outreach, about helping those who are less fortunate. It is all beautiful and wholesome stuff. Definitely look forward to staying in touch, and all the best to you and your beautiful family.
Thank you so much, Mr. George. Well, thank you to everyone who stopped by and participated in the live chat tonight. Everybody, of course, who financially gifted, a big thank you to all of you. And a big thank you to everybody who participated in the live chat. We appreciate that. When people get in, they ask questions, they're unsure. This is the only way to learn. You have to get your hands in and get a little dirty. That's the only way you're going to be able to progress and recapture that destiny that should have been and can still be your life. If only you'll take up the pen and write into the blank pages of our book, Your Heroism. We expect you to do so. It's okay, though, if you decided to be a wallflower today and just watch. We appreciate you as well. And a big thank you and hello to everybody who watches this in replay. Please share this magnificent show today with all of your circles, especially those that you are able to influence. Just grab the URL, share it around, tell them it was a great show to watch and there's great content, and you're willing to put your stamp of approval and reputation on it. But again, thank you to Roy Danton for moderating today. A big thank you to Matt for coming on with us and this entire community in service to white well-being. God bless you all. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you all again.